Hey everybody, Adam Goodwin, running for Red Deer City Council. I'm back again. I've got a few more great questions from Leanna. You can catch her interview with fellow candidate Calvin Goulet Jones. I'll try to find the link to his podcast and include it here. It gives you a really good bit of insight into her thinking, and I'll give you a quick bit of background. Her questions the initial one revolves around the firefighting and the staffing issue, and how that's all blown up and really gone quite crazy. She is the mother and the wife of firefighters. You can't get closer to the issue than that as a concerned citizen, spouse, parent, the whole nine yards. So thank you so much, Leanna, for sending these in. The first one has a couple of parts to it, so I'll tackle it, and then if I get time, I'll touch on the second one, and then I'll roll back with more. Jump right into it. Fire department staffing, immediate action required. She's asking, do I think that the current staffing policy puts citizens and firefighters at risk? If elected, will I commit to reversing the dynamic staffing policy? What concrete steps will I take to safely staff Red Deer's fire department given our current budget constraints? And I love how she allowed for that discussion part. Thank you. How will this ensure that staffing decisions prioritize public safety over politics? Again, these are the kind of things that I really want to bring because I'm not a politician. I'm an operations and a personal representation. I want to be your representation. And then finally, what's the stance on the vote of non-confidence against the chief and the two deputy chiefs? I can actually really start with that one very, very quickly because, again, as a leader and as an operations manager, there's always two aspects to it that have to dovetail. You have to be able to manage. Management is a science. It's deploying people and materials and getting things done. Leadership is an art. It's the art of influencing people to ensure that they're enjoying it and they're part of it and they're brought along. When you have a 99% vote that says we don't want you as a leader, we'll call it a non-confidence vote, however they want to word it, that's telling you're not a leader. You may be a manager, but you're not a leader. And I will also say that the city's statement that they support the current leadership, I think that's categorically wrong. I do believe that a change of leadership is needed, primarily with the council, because let's face the facts. We're going 8 years of a relatively unchanged group, and we're seeing a lot of things where they are the ones who are supposed to be holding people like this accountable. They are the ones who are supposed to be where the buck stops. And, in my world, as an operations vice president, as a leader, when something goes wrong, 95% of the time, maybe even more, it's my fault, my accountability. I didn't train people well enough. I didn't prepare them for what they were doing, whatever. So change in leadership, yes. Change in leadership in the fire department, I'm going to say highly likely, because ultimately there's a point where there's been so much damage done in the tent that you can't resolve it. And it's the failure of the leadership and then the next level of leadership. So yes, absolutely, I think a change is needed. Council, we know we're getting a new mayor, and ideally it'll be a leadership discussion at different levels. And I've also seen other people talking about the city manager, but we'll leave that for another date. Now, do I agree that the current dynamic staffing policy puts both citizens and firefighters at risk? Again, let's first circle back. We did not get here overnight, and we're not going to solve this overnight. I think that the dynamic staffing model, I've done a lot of research on it, and I've seen that it is effective. However, when you make a change that has emotional ties to it, because you can write down the numbers all you want. Like, let's not forget the fact that Red Deer's department has 4 times the overtime cost as Lethbridge. That's substantial for two cities that are very, very similar and very uh, similar in geography and housing structure and population. So that does need to be addressed. However, would I commit to reversing the dynamic staffing policy immediately? Yes, with the caveat that the union and the leadership sit down immediately and start talking about how do we address those numbers. $3 million worth of overtime is 2% of that tax hike. That, and I'll go back again. I was a shift worker. I have managed and led teams that are shift workers. I know for a fact that overtime is unavoidable. And there's a lot of great staffing models, and there's a lot of great metrics out there that'll teach us how to set it up and structure it, as long as both sides are willing to talk. If both sides aren't willing to talk, it becomes a very, very painful thing. And I think that the groups are at loggerheads because we've got 8 years, maybe even more. This may go further back than that, of very poor oversight of the city's leadership. So my staffing decisions will always prioritize safety. I come from a world where safety is always number one. There isn't a job that you're going to do that is worth risking the people around you or yourself. I can guarantee that there'll be risk assessments attached to everything I propose. There'll be risk assessments attached to everything I'll even venture a vote on. So in terms of all of that, I think that dynamic staffing policy has merits. The way it was implemented was wrong. You don't walk up and go, here you go, chunk new, and just live with it. And you don't allow things to get so bad that you need to do that. I think it needs to be stopped right now while the groups come to the table. Again, that's a very strong caveat, is the groups have to come to the table. So I hope that clarifies where I'm at. It's a possibility that I won't throw away in terms of future us, but it's a conversation that needs to be had right now. Yep, stop it, get everybody at the table. Do we need a review, a full-on review to back the vote of non-confidence? It's 99%. This is not something you might say, well, it was close, or maybe a couple of them were in a bad mood that day. No, the men and women of the emergency services made it very clear. So that needs to be followed up on. And again, I'm always open to discussion and more learning on it. I have been talking to a few of my friends who are firefighters up to the lieutenant level, because I really don't want to go too high and have things sort of skewed. I understand what the city council's perspective was. I understand a bit. I wasn't at the table. I didn't have everything in front of me. However, it's right now just ultimately saying, hey, I, as an organization, being the governance body, allowed things to get mismanaged for so long, and then now we force in this possibly too harsh of a measure. It was just done wrong. Question 2, fiscal responsibility, addressing years of irresponsible spending. Now this is absolutely my wheelhouse. This is one of the biggest reasons I've decided to run, and I'm really hoping my message around this resonates with people. So my assessment of the city's financial management over the past 8 years, especially the last 4, is terrible. It gets a failing grade, a D at best. Well, no, a D. It's not a fail. I mean, we're not in dire straits. We're not losing valuable assets. Things aren't crumbling. However, it's a B at best. I mean, why has the city manager and the city management let it go to a point where we've almost drained our reserve fund and hit people with a double-digit tax increase? That's unreasonable. Back to the accountability. Accountability always has another level. As a leadership group, the governance, how did they let this happen? How did this carry on? Kind of crazy to me. I'm gonna say my assessment is very, very dark. It is why I want to be here, because I bring that operations and the operational excellence experience to be able to speak at the level of the city manager. I mean, given a little bit of understanding and better coaching, maybe our city manager will be able to manage and lead at the same time. What actions will I take to stop irresponsible spending? First and foremost, I will always build the case for financial management and financial cost controls. And in that, I'll build the case. Ultimately, part of the role of a counselor, is to get counsel on side. So I have to be able to formulate a plan, articulate it well enough to get people behind it, another 4 counselors behind it, to move things forward. That, in terms of research, development, again, is where my strengths are. So I will always make sure that proper management, proper execution. Running a city, yes, is a complex endeavor. However, that's what people sign up for. You don't walk in and say, somebody who doesn't have a solid operational background, you're in charge, and then as a governance body, walk away and come back 4 years later and go, hey, why did you screw that up so bad? Yes, I'm being a bit dramatic there, I understand, but it just illustrates the point of making sure leadership leads. So governance has to govern. What is my view of the KPMG financial report card, and do I support acting on its recommendations? I'll start with a little bit of a cynical viewpoint. KPMG, Ernst & Young, same thing for the what was voted on for the MCC for the electric, light, and power. They don't make their money telling you everything's fine. If they came out and they did a dozen of these reports and said, everything's great, carry on as usual, or hey, you just need to tweak this here, tweak that there, they wouldn't make their money, because people would stop asking them, because everybody would say, hey, it seems like everything's fine. And the report card that they put out does look very dire, almost dire enough to ask KPMG to come help us dig out, or something like that. So again, a little bit cynical, but I've dealt in high-level operations, I've dealt in high-level organizations that have brought these folks in, and I will guarantee they're always trying to oversell you. That being said, there are a handful of things that are very, very important. And in those, I think out of the 10 main recommendations, there are a few that I think need to happen immediately. One is the budgeting process. We have archaic budgeting processes, and I've heard this from people inside the city. You do it one way here, you do it one way there, they have to go back and change this, you have to go back and change that, and eventually it gets here. So I would ask that there's a cost code provided, that everybody tracks their time for budgeting hours. And when that comes to us, prior to getting the budget, just the plan, when it comes to us, I want to see, what's the plan for how many hours you plan on spending on this? How does it work? How does that measure up against a few other years? That kind of thing. There's also quite a few more about streamlining services. I'm not a big proponent of running around saying, oh, we got to privatize services, because ultimately, when you've moved the ship a certain direction for long enough, it's got a lot of momentum. And it would cost you more to turn that ship around and send out 4 ships. For me, cost benefit analysis on everything we do. It sounds like a lot of work at the start, and this is why major organizations avoid it. But if you do a cost benefit analysis, a risk assessment, and then when things fail, do a proper root cause analysis, you can get rid of a load of bureaucracy and bureaucratic levels. So I think that there's some there. It's worth looking into. All of it, oh, good God, no. They are definitely trying to scare you into their wheelhouse, I guess, is really what it is. So, all right, so that's 2 out of the 4. And again, I like to keep these shorter, keep people, respect your time. I don't want to hold you hostage here while I'm rambling on about how I think things need to be. But overall, in these first 2 questions, I think that the strongest case for me as a city councillor is my high level of leadership, my high level of operations, formal education even. When you talk about the responses and things like that, I have ICS 300, which is an international standard for emergency response. So everybody's in here and everybody understands when they're mobilized, what it all looks like. I was, when I worked out at Nova, I was an industrial firefighter. I was sent down. I had worked quite closely with people. A lot of this stuff is my background. On the finances from the city, I'll be quite clear, is I will probably have the most experience of anybody in the last 10 years to be able to sit down with the city manager and really see, are you actually working to make things better? Or are you trying to pull the wool over our eyes and call it, that's just how we've always done things here? Because that's a terrible way to look at it. So thank you very much. By all means, questions, I love it. Comments, I appreciate it. Again, back to the campaign discussion, adamgoodwin.ca. Momentum is growing really strong. Signs are ordered. I'm getting some volunteers signing up, which I love. I'm getting some financial support, which I love, and I need more of both. Let's not forget that. Go to adamgoodwin.ca. Sign up if you can. I would appreciate it. And give me your thoughts. Give me your guidance. I want to be that conduit. So thank you all very much, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.